I'm Alex Newman, and today I want to talk to you about what's happening in Yemen. The first and most important thing to know from our perspective is that there are now U.S. boots on the ground in Yemen. This is another example of unconstitutional foreign interventionism that unfortunately just seems to never end. So a little bit of the background on Yemen, because the controlled media, the fake news media, is not saying a peep about it. So there is a devastating war going on there right now. It's been called one of the largest humanitarian catastrophes on the planet at the moment. It's just millions of people displaced, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people dead, maybe more, people on the verge of starvation, people dying from preventable diseases, hospitals blown to smithereens, a complete collapse of infrastructure, no food, the ports have been bombed. It's an absolute horror show. I mean, it's just, I think, beyond anything that we can imagine. And unfortunately, a lot of this devastation has been wrought with the use of American weapons. Of course, a little bit of background on the conflict. There's been a very long-running, kind of a simmering conflict between the Houthis, a tribal group in Yemen, and the Sunni factions. The Houthis, of course, are Shias, and the government of Saudi Arabia alleges that they're sponsored by Iran, which is, of course, a Shia government. The Saudi government is, of course, Sunni. And so the Houthis finally succeeded in ousting the U.S.-backed dictatorship there, and they kind of took over power there in Sana'a, the capital, and the Saudi government was very, very unhappy. The Saudi government, of course, is a close ally of the U.S. government. It also beheads Christians and apostates, and it's just generally an unsavory dictatorship. Not a big fan of freedom, not a big fan of Christians, and somehow it's considered a close ally of the U.S. government. And so Saudi Arabia decided they weren't happy with these Houthis in charge of Yemen, which is an incredibly poor country, and so they started bombing it. They sent warplanes over, they've bombed much of the infrastructure, they've bombed the ports, they've turned the country into a gigantic disaster. They won't let journalists in, so nobody really has a full understanding of what's going on there. But we do know it's a disaster, and now U.S. troops have arrived supposedly to help battle al-qaeda. Right, but then here you get to the next point of irony, which is that the Saudi government is actually on the same side as al-qaeda in Yemen. And in fact, the Yemeni government in exile, backed by Saudi Arabia, which is different than the Houthi government, actually sent a officially designated terrorist on the U.S. State Department's list of terrorists to Geneva to represent it in negotiations. So now you have the U.S. government in Yemen under the guise of fighting al-qaeda, even while at the same time being allied with the allies of al-qaeda. So if that doesn't make any sense to you, good. Maybe you could write your congressman and ask him what is going on there. In addition to the insanity of serving alongside the allies of al-qaeda under the guise of fighting al-qaeda, we have another extremely important angle to this story that, again, has been almost entirely missed by the so-called media. And that is the exploitation of this crisis by globalists to advance globalism and the globalist agenda. Now, the globalists have this plan to divide the world up into regions, right? You have the European Union. Now they're imposing an African Union on the Africans. In South America, they have the Union of South American States. Here in North America, they're using a NAFTA as a springboard to build a North American community, which eventually they hope will eventually lead to a North American Union. Now, in the Arab world, they have what's known as the Gulf Cooperation Council, and Yemen is not involved in the Gulf Cooperation Council yet. And so now you have all manner of globalists writing editorials and columns saying that, oh, we could just solve this crisis by telling Yemen to join the Gulf Cooperation Council. And that by itself is actually a springboard for a broader Middle East union that they've been talking about for quite some time. In fact, they've been promoting it over at the Council on Foreign Relations, the real heart of the swamp, if you will. And they've had different people promoting this idea that we should unify the Middle East under this kind of regional union. And they want to use the same model that they used to steal the national sovereignty and the national independence of the different peoples of Europe. So as usual, these wars are serving the globalist agenda. They're putting American lives on the line. They're squandering American treasure. They're killing innocent people. And always, when you look, it leads back to further pushing of the globalist agenda. So we need to get involved. We need to demand that our tax dollars stop being wasted on this. And we need to return to an America-first foreign policy of non-intervention, obeying the Constitution, no more illegal wars, and stay out of other countries' affairs.